Welcome to the 19th annual Pat Meyer Vision Award ceremony. I'm really glad to have you all here. I'll sort of start off by telling you who I am and why I'm here. I'm the chairperson of the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence, who is putting on this program today and awards the Pat Meyer Vision Award each year to a recipient, an individual, and a business. Other than being the chairperson of our coalition, I work for the Iowa City Police Department. I'm our domestic violence investigator, and I've been doing that for quite a while, working with a lot of the people in this room. And so as I look out and see the familiar faces and people who I've spent a lot of time with over the last 4 years or more, it really kind of, to me, symbolizes what our coalition is. We're a group of people that represent other groups, but larger groups that work to end domestic violence and bring services to victims and justice to our perpetrators, justice to our victims through that system. So I do want to tell you, I want to read to you our mission statement and help clarify what it is that the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence is, if you're not familiar. And our purpose is to be a collaboration of community organizations and individuals committed to ending domestic violence, to provide education and promote collaborations that support community services and social change efforts. So I would take this opportunity as I introduce our award ceremony today to thank everybody for being here, and also to thank you all for your work and the work that you do in our community to helping with victims of and survivors of domestic abuse. That being said, I know our attention has been drawn to this visual display in front of us here. I'm going to introduce to you Jessica Plyle, to let her talk with you a little bit about what this is and how it's related to Jessica. So thanks, Jessica.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to just read part of my artist statement for this, just so it comes out a little clearer. But this is part of the Together project, which has been occurring for about 3 years now. So the Together project is a collaborative live performance and video in which self-identifying women from a variety of backgrounds destroy and transform wax guns with kitchen and domestic tools such as waffle irons, hair dryers, high-heeled shoes, and at times only their bodies. These wax guns act as a metaphor for the violence that happens to many women on a daily basis. Every 16 hours, a woman is murdered by her abuser with a gun, and it took approximately 16 hours to cast one of those wax guns, so that was kind of a wild parallel. 1 in 4 women will encounter domestic violence, and 1 in 6 will be raped in their lifetimes in the U.S. Not only are many of our bodies attacked mentally, physically, and sexually, but the government also stakes claims on our bodies in the ways in which people vote, ban, and create policies. With 138 representatives and 31 senators voting against the Violence Against Women Act, and many of those same politicians voting against stricter gun regulations, it's apparent that these politicians do not see it problematic that women's bodies are so often targets. There have been 6 iterations of the Together project thus far, and over 85 self-identifying women have collaborated. At Together events, women are invited to share their stories and collaborate to ignite discussion about violence against women. I also initiate discussions about gender-based violence within the communities that these performances occur in. Through collaboration, continuing discussions, and activating art in public spaces alike, it's my intention to create communities, whether it be connecting intimately with women through personal interviews or on a larger scale with survivors across the U.S. Change happens in varying degrees. It can be as simple as a conversation or as complex as bringing together a group of 50 women to share their powerful and difficult experiences of sexual assault and domestic violence. When we come together, it is my hope that our voices are in unison. We are empowered to create community, discussion, and change. So thank you. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact me. And I also have a zine with all the representatives who voted against VAWA, and if you want their contact info, I can get that for you.
Jessica, how do we just pause? Yeah. Thanks very much, Jessica. I appreciate the
My pleasure.
explanation. Before we move on, and I'm going to introduce our speaker today, who will talk a little more in depth about the history in our community. I would like to recognize the coalition and the members, because I know how hard we work, and we're pressed for time in our daily lives and in our jobs, and every ounce of energy that you give to our coalition, I personally appreciate, and I know our community does too. And so at this time, can each member, can we all stand and just let the room recognize who we are? Thank you, guys. Thank you. Okay. At this time, I'll turn it over to Johnson County Attorney Janet Linus.
Thank you for being here, and I'm honored once again to get to be the MC for this event. It's great fun to be with people who have the same values about trying to end domestic violence as I do and as we try to pursue in my office. As you heard, this event is sponsored by the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Domestic Violence Intervention Program. And you've heard a little of this, but this month, October, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. There have been a variety of activities that have gone on so far this month. And during it, we try to kind of recognize people who are standing up to violence and also support the organizations and individuals who are doing this kind of work to try to end violence and try to help victims and families who suffer from domestic violence. You've heard a little bit about the statistics, but I want to give you a few more. As you heard already, every 9 seconds, a woman in the United States is assaulted or beaten. Around the world, at least 1 in every 3 women has been beaten, coerced into sex, or otherwise abused during her lifetime. Most often, the abuser is a member of her own family. 1 in 4 men have been the victim of physical abuse by an intimate partner. Domestic violence is the leading cause of injury to women, more than car accidents, muggings, and rapes combined. One study found that nearly double the number of women who died at the hands of their current or former partners equaled those of 11 years of soldiers killed in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. So double the number of soldiers killed in Iraq were the number of women killed by intimate partners. I found that particularly upsetting when we think about wars as being so violent and horrible and the death that comes from them. And often we don't recognize the death and violence that's going on all around us. One study suggests that up to 10 million children witness some form of domestic violence annually. Men who as children witness their parents' domestic violence are twice as likely to abuse their own wives than sons of nonviolent parents. If you've ever heard of the ACE scores or the Adverse Childhood Experience scores, domestic violence ranks right up there as one of the predictors of a childhood experience that can lead to adverse consequences later in life for health, violence, experience with violence and involvement in the criminal justice system. Nearly 1 in 5 teenage girls who have been in a relationship said a boyfriend threatened violence or self-harm if presented with a breakup. And 92% of women surveyed listed reducing domestic violence and sexual assault as their top concern. So you can see that it's this is a huge number of victims, and the consequences don't end with the victims but can affect the children who experience them in their lifetime and then future generations. It's something that we all take very seriously, and we're very fortunate to have people in this community, though, who are trying to end it. I want to point out a couple of things. One, you'll see in front of you these cutouts of a woman and a child. These are called the silent witness, and they were actually made by people who were in the Batters Education Program at the Department of Correctional Services years ago. Each one represents a woman and a child who were killed from domestic violence. If you come and look at them, they all have little shields on them that will describe the individual who they are representing. Unfortunately, we have too many of them that have occurred even here in Johnson County. I want to thank Jessica, too, for the very powerful visualization and her artwork that we just got to see, as it really represents and really gives you that sense of how victims are experiencing it. And I love the fact that there's a creative outlet for victims to be able to express how they're feeling and what they can do. So thank you very much, Jessica. I really appreciate your work. When I came in today, I had a few remarks, and then I looked at the program, which I'll encourage you to do, but it has a story on it, and I just thought, I want to read this to you in case you haven't read it, because I think it really represents why we have a Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence. There was a town on the river. One day, a dead body floated down the river past the town. Townspeople saw it and rescued it from the river and dealt with it respectfully, not knowing what had happened. The next week, a couple of dead bodies floated to the town. They again rescued the bodies and dealt with them respectfully. In the next few weeks, 6 dead bodies floated down the river and were rescued by community members. Alarmed with this pattern, the community held a meeting. Clearly, there was a problem and they needed to be prepared to deal with it. They decided to have the police department purchase a boat and the tools needed to get the bodies out of the river efficiently. They increased the budget of the coroner's office and the local mortuary and cemetery. They held fundraisers. They had a 5K run, a spaghetti dinner, and lots of bake sales. They became equipped to deal with the dead bodies that continued to float to their town. This continued for quite a while, and the community felt good about their work. Then, at the annual community meeting, someone asked some questions. Where were those bodies coming from? What had happened to them? This is something that it's like, as we see violence, sometimes we just react as the consequence. Oh, we're going to take care of the dead body. And what we really need to be doing is looking upstream to try to find out what is killing these people and what can we do to stop that. And that's really the mission of the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence, to go upstream, to stop the violence before someone's killed, before someone's injured, and to make sure everybody in the community is safe. We're very fortunate here in the Johnson County to have the Domestic Violence Intervention Program. It began in 1977 and provided direct services then, as well as continuing on today. It's expanded and now covers all of really southeast Iowa, from kind of Interstate 80 down just about all the way to the Missouri border, and providing shelter here and the shelter here, working in some other communities to try to provide shelter, but answering numerous crisis calls every single day. One year, I think this was from last year's statistics, and we'll have to get an update, but 18,000 crisis and phone calls were answered by DVIP, and they provided more than 8,000 nights of safe shelter to approximately 400 women and children. I think those numbers have gone up, and I might check with DVIP, but unfortunately, it's not something that's decreasing. Fortunately, to work with DVIP and support it is the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and we really do need to have this collaborative effort. So the coalition is made up of a variety of people from law enforcement, victim services providers, prosecutors, attorneys, healthcare providers, educators, business leaders, faith community, elected officials, et cetera. And on the back of your program, it actually lists them. So it includes, the members include the Domestic Violence Intervention Program, Johnson County Attorney's Office, the Iowa City Police Department, the Department of Corrections, 6th Judicial District, Iowa Legal Aid, the Crisis Center, Mediation Services of Eastern Iowa, the University of Iowa Office of Sexual Misconduct, Response Coordinator, Rape Victim Advocacy Program, Monsoon United Asian Women of Iowa, the Coralville Police Department, Abbey Center for Community Mental Health, and United Action for Youth. You can see that this number is varied in terms of who participates in the coalition, and all of them are important members to try to combat domestic violence. Now, why are we here today specifically? We're here today to honor recipients of the Pat Meyer Vision Award. And I am one of those people who was fortunate enough to actually get to work with Pat Meyer. And why did we decide to call this the Pat Meyer Vision Award? It's because Pat Meyer, who was the original director of the Domestic Violence Intervention Program and ran it from 1977 to 1999, had a vision of where we could actually live in a community and in a world where there wasn't any more domestic violence, where we didn't have to worry about our mothers, our sisters, our brothers, our children ever being victims of domestic violence. And she worked tirelessly day after day after day, trying to help people who have been victims, but also working on trying to end the violence. And so when we tried to come up with a name for this award to honor her, who was our first recipient, we wanted to include in there the vision that we can have a better world where we don't have domestic violence. So this award was originally given to Pat Meyer in 1999. And as you heard, we're in our 19th year, but I want to tell you about some of the other recipients, and I do this every year because I think it's important to hear how big of community support we have working on this. In 2000, St. Andrew Presbyterian Church received the award for having started this, or hosting this safe exchange program where parents, when there was a no contact order or restraining order against them, so because of violence in the past, could safely exchange their children for visitation. In 2001, Stephen Treves, who happens to be with us today, received the award. He was head of the Community Mental Health Center and was also one of the ones who helped us get started the Batters Education Program in Johnson County for people convicted of domestic violence, even before it was mandated by the state. And we appreciated your work then and your work now. In 2002, J. Patrick White, the former Johnson County attorney, was given the award for his work on trying to really push domestic violence as a crime in the state of Iowa and his work with victim assistance. In 2003, the 6th Judicial District Department of Correctional Services received the award, partially for having their participants, their probationers, design and actually make the silent witness project cutouts. I'll call them that. In 2004, Linda McGuire, the former head of RAC and the first assistant Johnson County attorney, and then law professor at that time, who started the Citizen Lawyer Project, received the award. Part of the reason for her receiving the award is that she wrote a manual for prosecutors all over the state in early around 1990 that was used to prosecute domestic violence cases, and it's something I still keep in my office today and refer to occasionally because it was such a very helpful manual and really teaching prosecutors who maybe had never prosecuted domestic violence about how to do it and why it was so important to do it. In 2005, Community Television Services received the award for their work on filming and helping to create public service announcements for the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence. In 2006, Chamber Electric and Crescent Electric received the award for their dedicated services for keeping the lights on at the Domestic Violence Intervention Program shelter. In 2007, Karen Seiler, who is a member of the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Rape Victim Advocacy Program staff person, received it for her dedicated work on behalf of victims. In 2008, Bob Hartman from the Iowa City Police Department, who is in back with us today, he was the domestic abuse specialist for the Iowa City Police Department then and received the award for his outstanding work on behalf of victims. In 2009, Marianne Petty, one of the advocates with the Domestic Violence Intervention Program, received her work for her tireless efforts on behalf of victims. In 2010, Sandy Booker, our victim witness coordinator at that time for the Johnson County Attorney's Office, received her work for tirelessly supporting victims, whether it was holding hands, bringing them Kleenex, or trying to explain the very complicated criminal justice system to them. In 2011, Linda Severson with the City of Iowa City, who had been a dedicated member of the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence, received the award on behalf of her many years of service. Unfortunately, Linda, it was given to her posthumously. In 2012, Alda Burrish, who is also here today somewhere, staff person with Domestic Violence Intervention Program, received the award. Again, one of those people who we keep her cell phone number handy in the Johnson County Attorney's Office because we know we can call her anytime, day or night, to help out a victim, and she does that tirelessly. We don't know how she does it and how she manages to do it, but she does. Also, Marcos Taxi Cab received the award for assisting always people at the shelter, including the story of going out in the middle of the night to buy a binky for a crying baby who could not otherwise be comforted at the shelter. In 2013, Andy Winkleman, who is here somewhere too, I saw him here. Oh, here he is, with the U of I Department of Athletics. His work on behalf of the Johnson County Coalition and trying to work with the athletics department and the university to try to promote efforts to decrease violence and recognition of what domestic violence was within the university. He received the award. At that time, too, Table to Table Food Distribution Network received the award for having provided lots and lots of food to the shelter on a regular, ongoing basis, and I believe they are still doing it, and it's much appreciated. In 2014, Joey Matuzik, where's Joey? She's here. She received the award. She's with the Department of Correctional Services and probation officer, and she has the pleasure of being the supervisor for the domestic violence defendants who are sentenced to probation and trying to make sure that they are attending Batters Education programs or the Iowa Domestic Abuse Program and hoping to reform their behavior. In addition to that, the Crisis Center received their award for their continual work on behalf of victims of domestic violence. Scott Stevens, who you heard earlier with the Iowa City Police Department, received the award in 2015 as the domestic abuse specialist for the Iowa City Police Department, and his tireless efforts on behalf of victims as well as his work on behalf of the coalition. And we thank you for being here. Hy-Vee also received that award, and you're going to hear about them again a little bit later, but they have always provided support and help to the shelter, including providing the shopping for the shelter, which I will mention again later, but it is this weekend. You can shop for the shelter at any of the local Hy-Vees, and I encourage you to do so. And then last year, Assistant County Attorney Rachel Zimmerman Smith, who's here as well, received the award for her tireless work on prosecuting domestic abuse cases, working with victims, developing new ways that we can try to assist victims within the county attorney's office and the court system, and her work on behalf of the coalition. And also last year, Lucky's Market, who provided support and also allowed domestic violence to be one of the organizations that people could put in their special coins for to get additional assistance from Lucky's. So you can see we have had quite the range of groups and individuals who have received this award, and we're very honored to have many of them with us today and really appreciate the efforts of so many. As you hear, it takes a village. It really does take a whole community to try to respond and stop domestic violence. So we are here today to present the 2017 Pat Meyer Vision Awards to an individual and a business. And I'm happy to introduce last year's recipient, Assistant County Attorney Rachel Zimmerman Smith, to present the first award.
It gives me great pleasure to present the award today to Charles Pierce. And I think this is going to be a painful experience for Charles because, as his father said, when I walked in and met his parents today, who came here as a surprise, to call Charles humble would be an extreme understatement. So if you see him squirming, just, feel sorry for him. We're going to talk you up. We're going to talk you up today, Charles. Charles Pierce has his BA in political science from Stanford University. He graduated in 1998, and he graduated from the University of Iowa College of Law in 2002. We were actually classmates, but I don't think we really knew each other back then. Since 2002, Charles has been a staff attorney with Legal Aid. He's worked in the Dubuque, Cedar Rapids, and Iowa City offices. And before law school, he worked in the admissions office for the MBA program at Stanford Graduate School. Charles had a number of people nominate him for this award this year, and I just wanted to read from one of the nominees, the nominators, who sort of encapsulated why we all think Charles is so deserving of this award. This person said, "In the world of professionals, most do their work very well and exceed the normal expectations in their required fields of expertise. They do this as a matter of course, day after day, year after year, case after case, client after client, never expecting any kind of acclaim or recognition for doing their job." And this defines Charles Pierce. In matters of protective orders, contempt of those protective orders, divorces, child custody matters, and on, Charles Pierce has faced some of our area's top law firms with all of the resources these firms have at their disposal, and has done a stellar job of representing the clients who have been victimized but may not have the resources to defend themselves in court. A recent victim comment was, "I was so scared to be in that courtroom with my abuser, but Charles kept my courage up by saying how much he believed my story, and then he would do all that he could to help me. He never made any false promises that the judge would see it my way, and I needed to hear that honesty." During his 15-plus years of being an attorney, Charles has tirelessly worked on community education regarding domestic violence by serving on many panels, doing seminars that deal with the effects of domestic violence. He is part of the Johnson County's Open Hours for Victims of Domestic Violence and the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence, as well as other organizations working with those who experience domestic violence. I can say personally that it's been a pleasure to work with Charles. Almost 2 years ago, we started open hours at the county attorney's every Thursday morning from 10 to noon. It's a drop-in time for victims to come in and talk about their case. And Charles, or somebody from Charles's office, mostly Charles, is there every week to meet with people. Often he's there for many hours. I think 2 weeks ago, he was there for about 4 hours talking to a victim who needed a telephone translator so that he could speak to her in Swahili. And his patience was amazing. And as a professional, and for many of you who work in this field, it's really easy to get jaded and forget that it's not the big victories that matter in these cases or with these victims. It's the little things. It's the paying attention to that person for an extra minute. It's making somebody feel like what they have to say matters, even if you can't do exactly what they want you to do. Those are the things that make change and hopefully inspire victims to protect themselves and get out of their situation. So I am very pleased to give Charles this award this year. It's well-deserved. Charles, you want to come up and get your award?
I wrote a little something. I want to thank the Johnson County Coalition Against Domestic Violence for this award. I'm truly honored and humbled. When I think about the past recipients of this award and the work they've done to help end domestic violence, when I think about the role of law enforcement and corrections, the county attorney's office, the domestic and sexual abuse advocates that are on the front lines dealing with the immediate aftermath and trauma faced by survivors, it's hard for me to think that I deserve this award because there's so many great people out there working in this area. The Johnson County Coalition has made progress with a coordinated community response, I think. Over the years, I've been helped in my work from members and member organizations of the coalition, fellow attorneys, my managing attorney, Janet Rutledge, who's here, my litigation director, Chris Lezzie, who's here. They've been great role models and mentors in my work. Our support staff at Iowa Legal Aid, volunteers, interns. There's countless names and people that I've come across that have been inspiration and role models in my work. If I've been able to help at all, it's because of lots of people in this room, lots of people that are not in this room. When I first became a Violence Against Women Act attorney in 2008, the attorney before me, her name is Cynthia Crossett. She's not here today. She got me up to speed on the grant. She gave me her material. She gave me her questions. Even though she was junior to me, she was an inspiration and just a really forceful advocate for victims and survivors. I still use her materials and questions to this day in the courtroom. Like all of the standard questions I use are her questions. So it's to her credit. I thank her for that. Domestic violence and sexual abuse advocates they're in my office providing support to survivors as I meet with them. There's lots of people in this room who have been in my office or at the courthouse while I've, at the hearings when I'm with the survivors, and they've also helped nudge me in constructive ways on behalf of survivors. As an attorney, we have a certain way of looking at things, and sometimes we need to get nudged to see things a different way, to be helpful in meeting our clients' goals, the survivors' goals. The County Attorney's Office, Rachel Zimmerman-Smith, the Iowa City Police Department, Detective Scott Stevens, they've helped provide technical information, and that's helped me help survivors. Questions like, should a survivor with a criminal no contact order be concerned about serving her abuser custody or divorce papers? I've asked Rachel that question a couple times because I always seem to forget the answer when there's a no contact order involved. And right now I'm kind of blank. I'm not exactly sure what the answer is. I'll probably have to ask her again, what should be done. Or what is the process law enforcement uses to subpoena records from internet service providers? Questions like that. I also thank my wife, Lynn, who I've been married to for 21 years. She's here. And for supporting me and being a great mom to our two boys, 13 and 9, Thomas and Alexander. And my parents are here, Sophia and Bill. They surprised me today. I want to thank them. I appreciate, and I'm, again, humbled and honored to get this award. But, I think we all know that the focus is, on the silent witnesses and the people that are with us today, dealing and living with and abuse and trauma, and I hope that we can continue the work on the coalition to help end domestic violence. Thanks.
At this time, I'll ask that Leah with DVIP step forward to announce the next winner. Thanks, Leah.
My name is Leah, and I'm one of the advocates at DVIP who work with the women staying with us at our shelter. And it's my pleasure to present the award to the Heartland Inn. If you're with the Heartland Inn, would you just be able to wave, just so I know? All right. Thank you for being here. So the staff at the Heartland Inn have been a huge support to us at DVIP in providing clients with a safe place to stay when other options haven't been available. They have gone above and beyond to ensure that our clients' safety remains a priority and have reached out to us to help navigate complicated situations when they didn't necessarily have to do that. I have personally seen staff reach out to us because they want to do what was best for the client when they could have handled the situation differently. They have worked with us at all hours and through all different situations. So whether or not you do realize, we just want you to know, I think on behalf of myself and all advocates at DVIP, we really do appreciate what you have been able to do for us and for our clients. So thank you, Heartland Inn, for continuing to be an amazing community partner, for serving our clients and ultimately helping keep them safe.
Good view. Awesome, thank you. I'll just echo what Charles said ahead. Thank you so much to everybody in the room. All of the work that you do is just incredible, and we're really, really grateful and humbled to be considered to be an advocate as well. It's our pleasure and our honor. Before I say a few words, I'd like to thank DVIP for the work that you do in our community. It's so important. I think living in Iowa City, many of us forget that a lot of other communities don't have these resources. And the work that's being done is helpful to the vulnerable people who are being helped, and then it's helpful to our community as a whole. Iowa City is a fantastic place to live because of people like you and the work that you do. It's undoubtedly a fantastic community, and we are really, really, really grateful. We at the Heartland Inn value very much our partnership with DVIP. It is partnerships like this that allow our business the opportunity to be the type of business that we all envision, a business that serves its community, that seeks to improve its community, and that works with impactful organizations like DVIP to make our community a better place for all who live here. At the Heartland Inn, we are not strangers to working with individuals who are facing stress and uncertainty. We have partnerships with the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics and the Helen Rossi House, the VA, DVIP, of course, where we often have families and individuals who come to us really fearful, and they're scared, they're seeking security and comfort. For some individuals, that feels like home. For others, it doesn't. And we really pride ourselves on the fact that our staff goes above and beyond to offer that to our guests. They want everyone to feel safe and to feel comfort and to feel like they're in a safe space until they can return home again. And often that's the case. I am so excited to take this award back and share it with our staff. The opportunity to make the positive community impact I've spoken of is very important to each and every one of us. This award serves as a reminder that our work is not only meaningful, but also that we can and do make a difference. Thank you again for the recognition. We are truly honored to receive this award and really honored that DVIP continues to partner with us in your cause. We hope to continue to play a crucial role in helping ensure that those facing abuse in our community continue to come out as survivors and not victims. So thank you again very much. Thank you.
Wow. Every year, it's like the people who get the awards and the businesses. I am so in awe. So thank you very much, both of you. Just a few closing comments. I want to remind you about a few things. One is, as you heard, feel free to get the list of legislators who did not support the Violence Against Women Act, and feel free to call them and continue to call our representatives to remind them to support the Violence Against Women Act. Additionally, I encourage you to call the governor's office. The budget for Iowa is going to be very tight this year, and providing services to victims is something that we do not want to see cut again, as it has been in the past year. And it's very, very crucial to make sure that the governor is hearing from you as well as our legislators. I think most of our local legislators are already very supportive, but it wouldn't hurt to call them too and just tell them thank you. Additionally, some other things you can do to help is remember that November, I believe it's 28th or 29th, is Giving Tuesday, and feel free to give money to Domestic Violence Intervention Program then, or today if you want. I believe you might even be able to do that here today. I'm sure somebody will take your money. I also want to give you the number for the hotline. The 800 number is 800-373-1043. I'm going to repeat that, 800-373-1043. Give that to somebody who you think might need it. Call it yourself if it would be helpful. Give it to some organization who might spread the word about how to contact DVIP for help and assistance. You've heard already about what the coalition is doing. And I encourage you to continue the discussions that happen at the coalition. Talk to people at your businesses, at your churches, at your organizations you're involved with, at your workplace about domestic violence. Don't let another body float down the river without trying to go upstream and stop what is happening. Speak out when you see violence. We have a supportive community. We will try to do what we can to support victims, but we also want to stop it. Last thing I want to remind you, what is this weekend? Shop for the shelter at Hy-Vee, a very simple, fun thing you can do. And so as we end this, when we've talked about some serious and sad things, I do want you to go out and shop this weekend and have a good time too. But I really do want to thank all of you. I see so many of you who have been advocates with victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, counselors, police officers, attorneys. So many people have done so much that they can to help victims and survivors of domestic violence. Keep up the good work, and thank you for all you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks again for being here today, everybody. And as you filter out, this is the end of our ceremony, but as you filter out, make sure to recognize these persons, our partners with the Heartland Inn, and Charles Pierce. Again, congratulations. But also the people in the community that you see here who help every day and in their off hours when they're at home, working toward ending domestic violence. So thanks again for coming. I appreciate it. Have a good day.